Welcome to the TruthSeekah Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, TruthSeekah, and we're about to get it in. It's about to go down. It's going down. We're going to discuss all things spiritual. We're going to talk about the dark side. We're going to talk about demons, demonology, aliens, ufology. Is there a connection? I know most of my Christian friends believe so. Most of my Christian friends will tell you that the lights in the sky are, in fact, hands down across the board, demons that want to kidnap you and put implants in you and abduct you and take you away. And I was scared of that my entire life because they were monsters that were probably real, right? You can see them. There's reports. There was a movie called Fire in the Sky that was about a true story where these demon beings stole Travis Walton and took him into the stars and did all kind of tests and implants on him. And they found him naked laying on side the road, you know, all these weird stories. And that scared the heck out of me as a kid. And as I grew up and getting into ufology or doing a little bit of studying, I definitely was led down that road of the demonic dark side. And there is definitely that polarity there. You know, I eventually got into talking about the angelic, and is there an angelic connection with ufology and lights in the sky? And I've kind of taken that route last probably 15 years or so now in that studying and my music and stuff like that. But listen, we got to be open-minded to explore both sides. There's polarity and duality within everything, and it's beautiful. And we're going to discuss that today with today's guest. But first, I want to say a huge thank you to everybody supporting my work via Patreon. This is a listener-supported, listener-funded show. Doesn't exist without your help. So thank you, kind people, for believing in the work. If you want to support, just simply go to patreon.com/TruthSeekah. All of my music, my interviews and book and meditations, bunch of stuff over there. I've tried my best to make it worthwhile for supporting. And there's community stuff that we got going on, School of the Mystics, Sunday morning breath work, bunch of really cool stuff. Go check it out. So shout out to Vonley Flowers. Thank you for coming on, my friend, and becoming a patron. David A. Gill, thank you for coming on as well. And Jeff Da Silva, and all of you other beautiful people who have been given for days, weeks, months, even years, some of you. Thank you for believing in the work. Check it out. Listen, next week is on the 20th, November the 20th, we got a retreat coming up in Mobile, Alabama, with myself and the man himself, Illuminati Congo, John Hooks, and it's going to be good. So only a couple tickets left. If you want to get in on that, November the 20th, Mobile, Alabama, go to TruthSeekah.com to get all the info on that. And if you want to meet in person and do what we're doing on this podcast and what we talk about in person, listen, breath work, Kundalini yoga, stargazing, hiking in the forest, hape ceremony, cacao ceremony. It's going to be really good to be able to do that in the flesh. So go to my website, check it out, and all the other cool stuff that we got going on, TruthSeekah.com. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring in today's guest. My guest today is Nathaniel Gillis, the Demonologist. Brother, welcome to the TruthSeekah Podcast, my friend. How are you?
Doing good, sir. Thank you. It's good to be with you and your viewers. I'm excited to be here.
For sure, man. For sure. You cover a lot of amazing topics, and you, like me and many other seekers, leave no stone unturned. I like the fact that you cover it all, and you've written books on these subjects, and got a lot of stories, doing the groundwork, just not theories, right? You're putting boots on the ground with a lot of this stuff, so it turns practical. It's not theories; it's stuff that you can apply, and it can help your life for sure. So, man, kudos to you and what you're doing with that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, brother. It's been a journey from one revelation to another. But, you know, my journey has been a little lonely and unique in terms of what I've been. I mean, everybody's just unique. But, you know, I grew out of a lot of dogma, and I had to grow into some new thought processes and understandings. But I think, like I said, it's a journey, and we're all on it. And I'm glad that we're together in it.
Yeah. So what do you mean by dogma? Obviously coming from religious trauma, right? There's that aspect, and most of us believe one thing and then we find out that it's another. But then you mention more revelation, and then you find out that it's another, and then it's another, and it's another. So we can never get too comfortable with our revelation and stuff. So what do you mean by religious trauma in your experience?
Man, so when I was growing up, I grew up in a haunted house. and I was experiencing different manifestations, different phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was going through that portion of my life, I was also attending a local church that was Pentecostal.
The best.
Dude, it's legit.
That's my people, man.
Legit, man.
Yeah.
And for people that don't understand it, they think that a lot of these, and I'm not going to mention these other preachers that are on TV and everything, and that's not true Pentecostalism. Pentecostalism, I mean, these guys they're bad dudes. They'd go out and fast for a month, come back, lose 30 pounds, and then have revivals where cataracts would slide off people's eyes.
Yeah, man.
So I've seen a lot in terms of that kind of power. But I grew up in that tradition, and we did have what we would consider exorcists come through and preach. Seriously gifted individuals.
What state was you in?
Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, man. I was a part of the UPCI for a long time. I grew up in it. So we had some bad dudes. We had one guy named Jonathan Zuber who he's one of my heroes of all time. He's a white dude that grew up in Africa and Haiti. He was a missionary's kid, and so he learned all of spiritual warfare from the locals there. And then so he moved back to the States, and he didn't recognize the church. It didn't make any sense to him. So he was really gifted. It was fascinating. Yeah. So I grew up in that tradition, that culture. And so it was difficult for me because what I was experiencing in that house did not fit in the blueprint of demonology they believed in.
Mm-hmm.
So you're dealing with shadow figures. Well, it's a shadow figure. We don't really know.
It's a demon, man. Yeah. Yes, we do know. The Bible's not go. That's what they tell you, though, right?
Yeah. And they try to, fit everything into it. And it came down to, if you experience something that we haven't or that we don't believe in, whether or not you experience it, it doesn't matter at that point. We're just not going to include it. You were going to say you're lying. We're going to gaslight you, all that stuff. And so it left me in a very vulnerable state. So I had to go through it. I had to wake up at nighttime with an entity in my room, feeling it almost like breathing in the room. It smelled like death. It was rotting. It smelled like a dead body. So, once that was pretty much the tradition in terms of like what they believed about this phenomenon. Yeah. That's what I had to grow out of, truthfully, and to understand it, because number one, I didn't want to feel like I'm crazy. I don't want to feel like I'm the only one experiencing this. So the older I got, the more I realized, hey, there's a group of people all across the world who are not only experiencing it, but they have groups that will welcome you and your experiences into. Which is really cool.
And which is what comes first, right? Everyone thinks they're crazy. Oh, wow, I'm the only one who wakes up and there's a man standing at my bed every night. You think you're the only one.
Right.
And you think you're crazy.
It's almost like the phenomenon itself wants you to feel like that, and shuts you off from other groups of people that would love you for what you've experienced and not, kind of disenfranchise you.
Yeah.
But that was my encounter, if not a confrontation, with this phenomenon. And from that moment on, I started to evolve into this own journey, this own pilgrimage into what it is I experienced, what it is we're dealing with, why I believe, that these aliens are actually not aliens at all. And, it's all compounded into this one fur ball of different concepts. But that's really where I started with my journey.
Okay. So let's start there with the experience of the thing in your room. Like, the easy grid is to say, yes, it's a demon. You can rebuke it in Jesus' name, and it leaves. And but what ended up happening with that? Was there a conversation? Was it calling your name? Did it follow you? What all happened with that?
Yeah. So it started out the very first time we actually visited the house. My parents went on an open house tour. They took me in. My dad took me by the hand. I was only like 8 years old. He said, "Take a look around in this room. This is where you're going to be living if and when we do purchase the home." So I'm looking around and everything, trying to figure out where I'm going to put my Sega, my PlayStation, and my bed and everything.
So what games was with that Sega when you moved in? It had to be a couple that were like near. It had to be a couple near and dear to your heart.
Honestly,
one.
Well, with a PlayStation, I did play Sonic, man, and I love me some Mario Kart, dude. I love like taking them. The turtle shells, just slinging them at people in their cars. That's not really real life. You can't do that in real life. So I don't know what they were trying to teach us back then, but no, that was my kind of gig, man. So, I'm looking around the room, and I remember to this day the stench that welcomed me in the room. I mean, when you walked in, you could smell something rancid. It gripped you. Like, you're like, okay, what is this? Like, somebody leave food in here and they didn't, they cleaned. What happened? Well, I'm looking around, for some reason, I was led to get on my hands and knees, to pull this the blanket flap up that was on the bed. So there's a bed there. I don't know why, but as soon as I did this, it went from like blanket flap to this face underneath the bed of a little girl. She had pale skin, black long hair. She's a beautiful little girl. She had a white linen dress on. It was made during the turn of the century, it looked like. And it was like she was frightened of me. She freaked out. I freaked out. I recoiled and was nervous, scared, you know. She shimmied her little body all the way to the back of the wall. And I'm looking at her and I'm thinking in my head, man, this family that's selling this house, they forgot their kid, you know. They went out for dinner and their kid stayed behind, and, you know, it's like a Home Alone situation or something. And I, you know, immediately put the blanket back down and I just acted like, you know, nothing ever happened. I didn't say anything till we got in the car. Come to find out, the people that were selling the house they were elderly. They had died. They didn't have, like, it was an estate sale, and there was no little kids in the family like that. So that was my first instance. Once we moved into the house, I would go to sleep at night, and I would wake up at nighttime, and I would hear someone walking on our wooden floors, creak, 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 and they would always walk up to my door. Then it would stop. So I mean, I don't want to keep going on with the manifestations, but that was the very earliest onset of the phenomenon.
And so the smell, were you the only one that can smell that? Because we know there's psychic smell, clairsentience, being able to smell spirits.
Yes, it was. And I didn't understand what it was that I was smelling until I got into the texts of the exorcistic rite according to biblical antiquity. And then it made a lot more sense. What I was encountering was what's called corpse pollution. It comes out of Numbers 19 and chapter 11, where the exorcistic rite originated. What was happening in history is people were going into houses, either new houses or old houses, and they would encounter what would smell like a dead body. And so if it was a dead body, they would still perform the same rite. Most of the time it wasn't. It was consciousness of someone that died. And so then they would have what's called the open vessel law, which means that if there was a ghost or if there's a dead person in the house, you have to go and close up all your dishes. You have your pots of food, you put lids on it, because they believe that whoever smelled that spirit had the ability to be possessed by it. And so at that point, then they would have
this is in Numbers 11. Do you know what verse?
Numbers 19. Numbers 19, 11.
Okay, 19.
No, you're good. Yeah. So it's called corpse pollution, but they discuss the open vessel law. So that's the origin of possession. I didn't know that at the time, but they believe that as easily as you could smell these entities, they could wrap themselves around you and in you and possess and commandeer your consciousness. So that's what I experienced as a youth. I had no idea, you know, and that's why, like, when I mentor ghost hunters, I tell them, look, you know, whenever you're encountering an entity that smells like that, it's possible it's actively trying to possess you. And I think, and that's not, to us, that would be new, especially a lot of ghost hunters I know, but to ancient exorcists, that was quite a common motif in their literature. But that's what I encountered, man, at the very first onset of it. But it moved even further. Like, it's crazy how it evolves. So there was one night where I was playing video games, and I saw movement outside of my window in the corner of my eye. And, you know, it's nighttime, so you got kind of different paradigms of vision going on. It's dark, but my screen's light, and what I'm looking at is dark, but I still noticed it. So I look over, and it took me 5 seconds for my eyes to adjust. And I look, and I see this dark outline, darker than the night it was in, and it's just looking at me. It's just looking at me. And so then it just kind of looked and disappeared. The next day it was, it's kind of funny because it was in the wintertime. The next day I get ready for school, and I go look outside, and there are huge footprints right next to my windowsill, which my windowsill was about 7 foot tall. So that confused me, because if it's supposed to be a demon, how come it has physicality, right? Then I started researching what a spirit was and all this stuff. So, you know, it was my very first encounter with these entities, but I 100% believe that wasn't a ghost that I encountered, or it wasn't just a, you know, a benevolent, happy, sweetheart little girl ghost. It was an entity that thought I was young, I was a boy, I would like to play with a friend. And that's how it manifested. So that's how I started getting into the thought patterns of these entities, how manipulative they could be.
Yeah, that's insane. I'm tying stuff together in my head. You know, I've been in the scriptures a lot for the last couple of days, yep. and you talking about that, and you able to see, like, you know, between the dimension of a shade, that kind of. Yeah. Listen, I just threw that word out there, shade. And if you're a student, like I'm a student, I've got my Bible eSword pulled up right now. Listen, last 4 days I've been in it nonstop. Yep. God won't let me come out of it. But the word devil in the Old Testament is really interesting. I've been into angelology lately. Last yep. 10 years, I've been studying the rankings and orders of angels, and even some of the demons. But they're more general. They're just lower level entities or whatever. But we know if we break down the word devil in the Old Testament, one of the words that pops up is a shade, which is a dark shadow being. Another is a satyr. There's levels, there's rankings, there's different beings. They're not just, hey, it's a demon in your room. Okay, well, what kind? Is he bringing a message? Is he here to attack me and possess my family? Like, what's happening? And so it opens up a lot of nuance in it for us to be able to explore. So the shadow beings, the shadow people, or the shades, which are mentioned of in the Old Testament.
Correct. You got your shade, and you also have your Rephaim. Again, once we get into like these different references to, you know, demons and shades and everything, it's difficult not to understand that there are a lot of scholars who disagreed on the origin of a demon. Most people, like in your Percadi Eleazar, Rabbi Eleazar, believed that these were the souls of damned people who died, were evil, they were unclean when they died, and they were unclean when they left their bodies. So the unclean man or woman becomes the unclean spirit that leaves. And we have evidence of that when Yeshua, Jesus, is speaking about when an unclean spirit goeth out of a man, it seeks rest. Why? That's not a demon. He's seeking rest. He can't rest. We call them restless ghosts, restless spirits. And when he findeth none, he goes back to its house. Well, if it's a demon that doesn't have a house, he goes back to his house. And we can go, I mean, he's quoting what's called the Apocalypse of Ezra, the prophet Ezra, where Ezra talks to Yahweh and says, you know, he says, what happens to an evil man when he dies? And he basically says, fascinating, you know, when an unclean spirit goeth out of a man, he wanders around seeking rest. He findeth none. And he goes into his house. When he finds his house cleaned and swept, what do you mean it's cleansed? He goes, this is interesting. He goes and he finds 7, and this is what Jesus is mentioning. He goes and he finds 7 other spirits greater than him. What are those 7 other spirits? Well, Apocalypse of Ezra says there's 7 stages of grief.
Wow.
So we're dealing with stages of the afterlife, not a, you know, it's not a spatial existence, it's a spiritual existence where he has to go through 7 stages of grief. And that's why when Yeshua sums it up, he says, and in the end, his death, or in the end, his end is worse than his beginning. Why? Because there's only one. It's not the one man he possessed. There's one him. He left his body. He became an unclean spirit. This is in Hebrew. It's a tuma ruah.
Wow.
And the ruah in Hebrew is ruach, breath. This is interesting because when we get the linguistics here, it's important. Ruach, spirit, breath. Now, when we're dealing with breath, there's only one species God ever breathed into, or at least through the nostrils, which that's what ruach means, to inhale through the nostrils. It separates, right? That's Adam. So ruach, breath, to inhale life through the nostrils. So we're dealing with a species of spirit. We're just entertaining some of the ideas that the rabbis and scholars have, but it's interesting. So you're right. It's very nuanced. It's complex, and it's not as simple as okay.
It's tying a lot of stuff together for me. I tell you, I had another awakening Sunday and Monday, and I haven't. It's been insane. But everything you're saying is tying so much together for me. So I appreciate it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff, man. But the idea that consciousness can exist outside of the body, and that it can mutate into something that it was not prior to, it's propped up by also the understanding that good people, they can die and they can evolve. And so what happened to our ancestors and our ancient scholars is that they had an idea. Either demons are just demons that God created that fell, or we're dealing with at least some entities that we consider demonic, that are actually malevolent entities, that are unclean spirits, that will use people as hosts to rest in. They'll hide and stuff. So is this good? Can I keep on going?
For sure.
I know we got, okay.
Yeah,
Because I could just really wrap on this stuff for a while, man. But, you know, and one of the texts that the scholars really point to is Psalms 109:6, where it's called the curse text, where David is really hating on one of his haters. It's hilarious to me. And he's like, you know what? He goes, there's this guy that's accusing me, and he's a false accuser and everything. And he says, you know what? Why don't you appoint over him a wicked man? This is hilarious to me. Savage. Our man David was savage. Appoint over him a wicked man. Now, the Hebrew word there is rasha. Rasha has a dual meaning. It means possessing, and evil. So what he's saying, and this is why scholars really wrestle with it, he's saying, I want you to go send an evil rasha, possessing man, to my enemy. It's deep stuff. And not only that, he said, then place a Satan, an accuser, at his side. And so ancient demonology believed that there are many possession cases when you have a ghost possessing the individual, and you have a Satan next to him who is tormenting the possessing entity. This is why when you get into Catholicism, it's very damning, because these exorcists have the ability to confuse both of them as the same entity. Yeah. When your Kabbalistic exorcists say there's two of them in there. And this, I'm just ranting at this point, but yeah, it's fascinating. And all of this, right? Obviously, this is just us hypothesizing, or at least they were. But I think that it's a good foundation to start from when discussing the possession phenomenon.
Yeah, just to let you know where I've been last couple of days, it is about the ascension. It's about the ascension. I was given the revelation. It's always been there, and I knew pieces of it, that the Bible is a book of ascension. It's about becoming a God. Jesus showed us how to do it, and within it, there's so many layers. There's spiritual, there's allegorical, there's literal. There's so many different nuances that you have to attain light in your body to be able to even understand it. You're not going to pick it up and be able to break down this stuff that you're sharing right now. This takes years. First of all, it takes experience. You have to open up your sheet and see a spirit looking you in the face and smell it, so that when you read over that text that talks about an unclean or a foul spirit, wow, the synapses connect, and you got the revelation that Pastor Joe doesn't have, because he doesn't even believe in those things. So the unlocking. So where I've been is knowing about the ascension and the people that have ascended, and those are the saints. Those are people who have achieved their light bodies, and Jesus ascended, and he showed his light bodies to his disciples, right? But again, what about those people who haven't? And so I haven't even touched it yet. So what you're bringing to the table for my study this whole week is definitely the side of what happens to the individuals who are damned, or who die with more darkness in them, where they're not able to ascend out of this state of purgatory or hell where they are now, and they become roaming spirits or wandering stars, even things like that. So
yeah, man, we call them restless spirits or unclean spirits. Now, what's fascinating is unclean is a very unique term, because it's limited to the Torah. It's very interesting. So what defines them as unclean? One also very interesting aspect of this is it points to the fact that we're dealing with mortals here that died, is that when you go into the New Testament, the texts, Yeshua, as the exorcist, he would always use the word go, get, right? Get thee behind me, Satan, or go. Now, it's a King James translation of the Hebrew word get. Get is a bill of divorcement. It's very unique. The way he phrases this. Literally, it's when you're dealing with the entity, God has divorced you, and it was almost as if they took a marriage covenant and said, this is what you were supposed to do, right? And you broke the covenant. Now you're devolving. Wow. Not evolving. you're devolving, and I would suggest that in the beginning, darkness was on the face of the deep. Emptiness, void. And so, all of these different references back to the beginning of creation and where people go back to after it's very interesting. Anyways, but yeah, so again, the fact is here, guys, is if these are supposed to be divorced beings, God never married angels. Never, it's so the literature and the theology starts to crumble, and
he married Adam.
He married Adam.
Restored in Christ, right?
Yes, then married Adam to Eve, was the best man and the father. Dude, I love that. That's Mordecai Kaplan, by the way. You got to get his book. He talks about that whole symbolism in Genesis. But yeah, it's beautiful. So you're right. And so when you get to the linguistics here, ruach, to inhale life through the nostrils, who did that? The Adamic race. So these are the little arguments that scholars point to that maybe we're not just dealing with angels that fell, but we're dealing with men and women who devolved according to their lifestyle, and then when they died, they pressed pause on their existence, and now they themselves are being haunted like we are in this dimension. It's very interesting. That's what a lot of people believed.
Wow. I'm trying to find my notes really quick because I got to take some notes because I have to. The whole divorce scenario, to get out, right, means divorce, because all of this is in legal terms, right? You give the entities or the energies legal ground to be in your life, to be in your auric field, to torment you, to be in your mind. Why? By the deeds and the things that you're entertaining while the sun is up. And when the sun goes down, here they are. Here's the witching hour. The beings are loosed on the earth or loosed into your life. And you have to sever those legal contracts. And that's what Jesus says, get out. I'm severing this legal tie. Interesting thing, the opposite of what you just mentioned that I found out this week was a revelation to me. To not only, so to get out is one thing, but the opposite of that would be when he sends somebody, like a commissioning. So everybody he dealt with who, like, he imparted some knowledge or wisdom or healed them or whatever, he sent them back to their home. Go back to your family. Stay away from those people because they're going to try to talk you out of it. But when he sent them out, that word sent out there is he sent them at is apostolos. He commissioned them to bring his truth and carry his truth into their life and into their world. So this blind man that he healed became an apostle because he's now carrying the message of the Christ. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So these words and these little nuances that are in the stories, man, so good.
And it brings a lot of flavor to it. It brings it home more. And I've done, I grew up Christianity and everything. And so my dad's a Bible scholar. So I've had many, many conversations in my life and been allowed to, thankfully, where, you just like that, you'll find a scripture and then somebody illuminate your mind. I'm like, what about this little nuance? And then it's like, oh my God, it completely unlocks the text. But, again, like diving into this narrative of, are these entities that originated at death, that were living people at one time and embodied, it goes back to Genesis 6 and the legend of the Nephilim. What were they? Why is it that the Bible refers to them as Rephaim, giants? But Job says this. This is interesting, guys. We have to research this further. Job says, can giants be born of the dead? He's referencing this, and that's the Septuagint version. The actual King James says that dead things are formed beneath the waters. Dead things are formed beneath the waters. That word for dead can be translated as Rephaim. It is Rephaim, but it can be translated as dead or giants. What Paul's using is a reference here. He's tying giants with dead, with the dead. Yeshua, or Yahweh rather, mentions that as well. And he talks about the congregation of the Rephaim, the congregation of the dead, not giants, the dead. Even in Proverbs 8, what was it? The wise woman is standing, she's sitting on the top of the gate, and she's beckoning all of these visitors to come into her home. And the Bible says that when her visitors get inside of her house, they know not that her guests are the Rephaim. And the translation there is, are the spirits of the dead. Wow. So when we get with these linguistic,
so you think that's what the Rephaim are, is the spirits of the dead?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So matter of fact, not just the spirits of the dead, but we're also dealing with the Hebrew form of Rapha, Jehovah Rapha. Rapha is where we get the word Raphael, the healing angel. To Rapha, to heal. So your earliest scholars of antiquity, they believe that these Raphaim were not just deceased people, but these were your first physicians and your first exorcists who had turned against their own calling and went to the dark side and then died. So then they carried their knowledge into the afterlife. Now I'm Raphaim. I was a healer. This is why we're at war with not just we got to look at every form of spiritual warfare, necromancy especially. And that, again, when we're dealing with ufology, which we'll get into shortly, but we're not just dealing with just entities that can manifest, just ghosts, I don't believe. We're dealing with high-level entities that make Aleister Crowley and Eliphas Levi look like just peasants.
Let me ask you this. You this, and I know we're tie this into ufology a little bit, but
later, whatever.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So my understanding has been changing a little bit. Revelation has been changing, and it's out of a less romantic, that we romanticize with the text, and most of us who know Enoch, and I've got some demonologists watching, and a lot of people start there, and we're getting into that. So the idea of the sons of Seth, if you will, right? And so being the Nephilim were the gods who came down and made it with women. And so Michael Heiser's big on that, the divine council of the Elohim and the gods who came down, and those children weren't able to go back to heaven. And there's all of this kind of nuance, which became demons, maybe a realm of demons, maybe some demons. But it's kind of, and I've taught that, I believe that, but it's kind of been changing a little bit, like that because we like romanticize it. What you're saying and what we're kind of getting into is like, hold on, the consequence for turning away from God, from being a fallen angel, that's what these were men at some point. Or did they start off as gods? Because Psalm 82 does say, you are gods, but you're going to die. Now I'm going to limit your life. You were gods, but now you're dying as men. Who do you think that those people were?
I lean towards a concept that was known in Mesopotamia. See, one thing that we have to remember is, and I didn't like this at first because I wanted it to be wrong. But the Nephilim narrative was recorded by different religions at that time. And so even the term angel or malachim in Hebrew did not originate in Hebrew consciousness. They picked up that term from another religion, and every religion, and incorporated it into their theology and angelology. So in comparative literature, malachim meant deceased ancestor. So when we have fallen angels, a lot of your rabbis will have a difficulty with that, because they're like, okay, if you're an angel, how'd you fall? And if you fell, why are you still an angel? It doesn't make any sense until you start looking at how Yahweh refers to men in battle and how they fell. This man fell in battle, and you start to see that it's very interesting that these terminologies that are employed about angels are also employed about mortal men at the time that they die. So let's dive even further. So the narrative of the Nephilim, I think, is correctly understood when you realize that the Malachim they're referring to was deceased ancestor. So it makes a lot more sense. So what I started doing when I dove into this literature is I realized that it's difficult to flesh out any good narrative in Genesis 6 when we're reading Shakespeare in English. It's Hamlet and all this. It's really how it was written. So what I needed
For
was
good reason, though. For good
yeah,
reason, so that you
yeah,
have to dissect it, so you have to ponder.
right.
Yeah,
It's like a parable almost,
for sure.
Um, so and I did dissect it. I wanted to dive into it head
Hmm.
first and get more understanding because it was highly nuanced, highly difficult. Who are they? And so it wasn't just my experience in it being difficult with it. I mean, we have people out there saying these are the sons of Seth, and
Hmm.
we can't justify how they had giants, where they come from. Well, the DNA was added. So okay, who did that? Well, we don't know. I mean, we even have the Testament of Reuben where it says, that we're blaming on the women. The women were, it's the women's fault. Matter of fact, the angels didn't even fall; they just fell in love. And how did they do that? I mean, there are many different problems with this theory. Where did they get the seed to inseminate the women with? How did they do that? Do they have their own?
Yeah.
No, did they steal it from somebody else? So all of this nuance is present in the text. It wasn't until I got a hold of what's called the Apocrypha of John as a Coptic manuscript preserved by Egyptian monks. It gave commentary to this event in history. They said that when the Bible mentions that they went into them and married into them and made of them wives, it wasn't as if they signed covenants of Torah with them. It said that what happened was these entities waited until the husbands were absent from the wife. It's very dangerous,
At
man.
war. I mean, that's what David did, right?
Right. And then they would meet. This is very interesting, guys, because there's a lot of people that have never heard this before, and I love teaching it because I know when I first heard it, dude, I went off. I was like, oh my God. I called my dad. I said, dude, Revelation, man, when it hits, it hits. So he said that these entities manifested to the women in the image of their husbands. Whoa.
Where's that
The
at? Where's that
husband's
at? Where's that
gone.
at?
Apocrypha of John.
Okay.
This gets wild quick, man. They manifested in the image of the husband. Now, for your religious scholars out there, this is why Paul says, if another Jesus comes to you.
Bro, like Jacob wrestling with the angels, he saw them ascending and descending. He's seen them evolving and messing up to come back down. Wow.
So, yeah, this is interesting. So, Paul's teaching this. He's teaching this concept. If another doctrine comes to you, if another spirit comes to you, matter of fact, if another Jesus comes to you, watch this. Paul says, I have espoused you to one. We're dealing with someone who's married and dealing with an entity that's going to manifest as the covenant, the doctrine, the spirit, and the name to the bride.
Yeah.
As though I'm the husband. It's fascinating. So the Apocrypha of John, it says that they manifested to the women in the images of their husbands. Now, why? So they groomed them into intercourse. Now, this is very important, guys. At the moment of conception, they stared into their eyes and they changed their appearance to what their apparition really looked like. That's why this is why I teach that these are deceased people. So you have the apparition staring into the eyes of the female while it's inseminating her. Now, what are we dealing with? Now, in antiquity, that's called an obstetric tradition. When Jacob would bring his sheep or goats to the water before they mated, it was because they looked at their own image, their own images. They would recreate after the image they were looking at. That's what's called the obstetric tradition. They believed that whatever image the woman was focused upon at the moment of insemination, she would birth the material image of through her womb as a child. This is why they did not want her to recreate the image of her husband. They wanted her to recreate the image of their apparitions. Very important, man. So now what do we have here is we have the software and the hardware. We have the apparition that fathers its own child. Now I have evidence that they're possessing the child that they fathered.
So
very interesting.
So these beings, were they ascended beings? Were they beings that ascended and then kind of?
They're liminal. So we're dealing with liminal entities. Now, liminal is just an academic term that means they're in two places at once, or they're in between two places at once, one of the two. So I would suggest to you that let's get back to the Elohim real quick for a fleeting moment.
I'm trying to tie that in a little bit about the ability to shapeshift, about the ability to take on after ascension, or maybe even on lower levels, like some dark shamans are able to.
Yes, they can also do that.
Change their face. So Jesus did that when he came back to his disciples, when he didn't want them to recognize him yet. He took on different forms, and he also showed his light body as well. So I'm just thinking of the ascended beings are able to morph or shapeshift.
Yeah, these entities are. They're still doing it this day. But yeah, so they inseminated the female, and then they created this species. Now in the Apocrypha of John, it says that from the darkness they bore children. From the darkness, what's the reference here? Devolvement. From that portion of death they existed, they created children that had the image of their likeness. So I describe this as if it's the nature of possession. It's not the relocation of consciousness, it's the replication of life.
It's forceful.
It's almost in the sense in a legal form of reincarnation to them, where they will create a child and then place their consciousness in it. Now, what's interesting about this, it's not transient possession. It's not an entity possessing dear Aunt Edna when she's, in the shower or going out a grocery store, looking for contact lenses. This is different. Now I have a body that looks like my apparition.
Okay. Now I got to stop you there, because I'm tying things together a little bit here.
Yeah.
I'm with you now. And I know you're not traditional Christian anymore, but it kind of seems like, the next blow is like, here is these beings who came down and impregnated Mary to have their seed. I didn't know if that's where you're going with that.
No, I'm not going with that at all.
Okay.
No.
Because I know there's people who would say Jesus was an alien, or Jesus was these kind of things. And
well, I think that we're at war, and I think that Yahweh did that for a reason, because now I'm in your territory.
For sure.
Watch this. The Father's and the Son. Wait a minute. Right? It's an amazing the way that they outline that. Anyways, so that's what they did. And so I think, again, if we have to understand the nature of possession according to antiquity, our earliest text, according to James Fraser, the Golden Bowl, the anthropologist, is that possession originated on the battlefield when warriors were mortally wounded. They were dying, but they didn't want to die, so they would actually leave their own bodies prior to their body dying, dispossession, and then commandeer the consciousness of another person, place their soul in that individual as a form of survival. So as long as there was a body for them to inhabit, their soul exists. It's very interesting.
Well, and maybe this is where you're going. I don't know, because not a lot of people go here. Not a lot of people go here with the maybe alien grays, which people think are, these just a body that was created that is lifeless, and then the spirit of the fallen, the demon, is able to now have a suit in this reality, like almost like Charles Lee Ray dying and becoming Chucky, and I'm still here. Right, so that the alien grays are meat suits that someone or something put a spirit inside to animate. Is that where you're going?
100. Oh God, yes. Oh yes, and I have a lot of evidence to support that. Number one, these entities in Genesis 6, according to the Apocrypha of John, has said that they had the same likeness. Matter of fact, they said they had copies of bodies. Hello, Grace. Same things. And okay, so Fritz Kramer, he wrote a book called The Red Fez. He would call these skin suits social skins. Now, our scholars in antiquity called these social skins an exterior soul. So the interior soul is what we would call an apparition. The exterior soul is what that apparition possesses, the body. That's the exterior.
Yeah. Would that be some of my studies kind of showing me the difference between a soul and a spirit, like the soul and a spirit, like something like that?
Yeah, soul
becoming a spirit, if you will, in this process.
Yeah, Yes, very much so. It's the it's the creating of what's called the social skin. Now, in the Bible, it references the social skin as a garment. It's a garment that one leaves. It's like taking off a coat.
Mm.
Now, what's also interesting again is that this social skin was designed for them to interact in this dimension with us. It's almost as if it extends their life. Yeah. So the more social skins they can make, the more social skins they can possess. You could have 1,000 grays and have one entity possessing them all.
Legion.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. But
yeah.
So again, I don't know how much time we have. We have like
Man,
what, 31 minutes or 50.
We got as much time as you want. You know.
Okay.
I'm enjoying this so much. Like, this is where I've been. This is like, dude. Just be straight up with you. The Lord is speaking through you, like, heavily. So
I appreciate it.
For sure.
Thank you, man. Yeah. So that's what we're dealing with. We're not just dealing with entities that want to appear to have a relationship with us, or even religion. I mean, we're dealing with entities that want to commandeer the covenant that God made with his people and assume the position of doctrine, authority, and not just that, but unction and spirit.
Yeah.
You know, Paul deals with this, and I don't ever talk about this because usually it's just, negative. But TruthSeekah, we're going to dive in today, man. Paul mentions this because he's dealing. I am espousing you to one husband. Why? He's dealing with the covenant here. He's dealing with the fact that entities are going to manifest to you. They're going to say they're Jesus. They're going to say they're Yahweh. They're going to try to give you covenant. They're going to try to give you manifestation. They're going to give you doctrine, right? Your husband's away. He's not returned yet. And he says, if that happens, right? He's screaming in the midnight of man's imagination, hold the phone.
Yeah.
So, so I do believe we're dealing with the same entities in ufology as we're dealing with in possession cases.
Well, you know who I have a lot of respect for, and it's almost like a hero in that story to me, Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas.
Yeah.
Jesus leaves, and he tells them before he goes, listen, many are going to come in my name and they're going to try to deceive you. And then most of the disciples believed the first apparition that showed up, who said he was Jesus. Everybody said, hey, it's him. And Thomas is like, hold on, man. Like, he just told us that they're going to try to get us. They're going to try to trick us. Like, you can't believe the first one. I need proof, So I have a lot of respect for him as a seeker, as a truth seeker. You know what I'm saying?
And people, at least in my experience with Christians, they dog him, man. That's
exactly.
Thomas.
Exactly.
Thomas.
It's a virtue, man.
Yeah. So let's get back to the idea of these Raphaim existing and having knowledge, prior to even their death. These were your first, not just exorcists and physicians, but these were your first midwives as well. That's why Lamishtu was supposed to be a midwife. Like in Egyptology, they had when the Hebrew slaves were in Egypt, they had a demon, a female demon that they believed were killing their babies by being their midwives. So it's very interesting how all of these different roles, your physician, your healer, your exorcist, and your midwife, are all manifested in the UFO abduction phenomenon. It's interesting. So let's get back to, again, their knowledge and what they understand. So there is no behavioral pattern now in the field of ufology that has not already been manifested in through necromancy in biblical antiquity. Mm-hmm. Now, I have about maybe 30 more minutes. Is that okay?
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. We're still on schedule. All right, good. So let's look at this as an aspect of the afterlife. So again, we're dealing with possession and how possession works. There was a core group of people that existed that believed that when an ancestor of theirs died, that they would bury them in the home in the basement. They were called family gods. It's called intramural burial. Then they would go to an artificer of metal, blacksmith, and say, okay, I want you to create an image of my deceased ancestor out of metal. And so then they would take that piece of metal, they placed it in their home, and the consciousness of that unclean spirit would possess that piece of metal, and it would exist in that image that it had possessed.
Can I drop a word to see if it's the same thing? Teraphim?
Yeah.
Teraphim?
Yep. So then later on, they evolved in their understanding where now they were digging up corpses of the recently deceased, taking them, dragging them into their homes, and taking a small metal implant, carving the name of an unclean spirit, a tuarua, or tumarua rather, an unclean spirit, right? Ruach, someone who died, who inhaled life through their nostrils, now they're dead, and placing that name on the metal and then implanting the metal into the corpse. Now that consciousness is possessing the dead body and speaking through it. I do believe 100% that that's what we're dealing with in the implant scenario.
Wow.
They're putting consciousness in us, their own.
Man.
Matter of fact,
it's like you start seeing, it's almost like, in like, a lot of this is romanticized within the horror movies and stuff like that. So if, there's movies about somebody who, they went blind, and so they got the eyes of a dead person who was a wicked person, and now they're seeing things that person saw, right? So now this entity or this spirit's like living and communicating through them because there's some type of form of connection. They're connected with them,
and
in the sense of a chip, also, like you're saying, implant.
Exactly right. Yeah. So what are they putting into us? They're putting themselves in us, in a way. And so hold on, man. There we go. Sorry about that. I had my phone on do not disturb. I don't get that. Anyway, so what happened is, so they had this understanding years ago, thousands of years ago. Okay. What's fascinating is that if we understood that context, then it helps us understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. Like I have cases right now, not my cases, but I know of cases of abductions where like one was a young kid. He's like, it was actually written by an adult, but he remembers. He reflecting back to his childhood, and he says, one day I was getting ready for bed. He says, and all of a sudden I'm looking around, and he said, I'm in my room, but what I'm seeing is like I'm outside of my room, flying closer to my house on the east side. He said, so I was looking through their eyes.
Wow.
And so I would suggest that they were looking through his. So what they did is they had put an implant in him, and they created a unified stream of consciousness. So it's not Google Maps. It's just, when do I want to be with him or her? And then I'll figure out where I'm at. It's a wild concept. But we're dealing...
Somebody here in the chat says, Amber Virgo says, right, that's why a lot of psychics know so much, because of their demons, right? The lady that had a spirit in her in Acts 19 that Paul rebuked, there was actually a spirit of Python that was within her, and she was able to kind of see and know things and communicate from this unseen realm because there was some kind of connection that she had through possession.
To pull things.
Yeah, there's a righteous, all of this stuff has polarity, right? There's a righteous or a way to use it for light and a way to use it for darkness, right? God's kingdom is the kingdom of light. We are connected with him, and he's in us, and he's speaking and downloads, and we're hearing things, but it's usually good stuff. It's beautiful things of evolution and higher vibrational existence stuff, versus on the other side, derogatory things, kill yourself, and all this kind of stuff that people are hearing voices and having nightmares and stuff,
You're right. There's polarity to it. And I've seen, like, I wouldn't call it possessions, but I've seen people who've had gifts where they've evolved into their ministry or whatnot. And, they're very gifted, very anointed people. But, so the idea that these were the first exorcists and everything, they have knowledge, they have preternatural knowledge that we don't have access to. Not only that, what I've been doing lately is I've been studying these abductions that don't include the body. So let me give you a scenario. Imagine that, like, you're a husband, right? You're going to bed at night or whatever, and you roll over to make sure, your wife's, your partner, whatever, they're good to go, they're asleep and everything. And out of nowhere, you see their apparition peel itself out of the body and float out through a window into a ship, a ball of light you see outside the window. That's happened all across the world. Matter of fact, this is Ray Fowler's work. Ray Fowler was working with Betty, Andreas, and Luca, where Betty, that was Betty's case. That's Bob Luca, her husband, was the one that witnessed her soul leave her body. Now, Betty Luca remembers the encounter, even though she was never physically abducted. These accounts of spiritual or soulish abduction fill the airwaves all across the world. And people are starting to come out of the woodwork by expressing, finally, okay, this is what's been happening to me my whole life. I never understood it. But according to Ray Fowler's research, these abductions include every bit of what a physical abduction would include. You know, they talk to the individual, they educate the individual, and then right before putting them into their body again, they say that you won't remember this until it's time. So all of this fits into something that I discovered in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 13. This gets very dark and disturbing quickly, so just bear with me. Yahweh references a species of necromancer that has the ability to pluck the soul out of the body, and he calls them soul hunters. And it's in Ezekiel chapter 13. Those who hunt the souls of men to make them fly. Soul, nefesh, and neshama. These, again, they're a specific species of entity that will go into the homes at nighttime, and they will pluck the soul of the victim out of their body. So what happened was, in antiquity, these individuals would create certain nets around their bed at nighttime. We would call them dream catchers. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason they did that is because they did not want the dream snatcher, the dream entity, to come through, snatch their soul, and they had a net so that they realized, they hoped at least, that the net would catch their soul from leaving with them. So they created these different amulets, different forms of warfare.
That's good, yeah.
But these entities 100% had the ability to pluck people out of themselves and to make them fly. Now, this flying reference is, it goes back to an ancient Egyptian reference to the bird soul, or the Ba'a soul. We see that in the Demonology in Psalms 91, when David's talking about the snare of the fowl, right? That bird soul, that entity that will
unclean birds, creeping things,
right, snatch them, So they believed that this Ba'a soul would leave the body at the moment of death. We would call them an orb. So when the orb would leave the body, these entities would snatch it, use it, manipulate it, enslave it, capture, all that stuff. So in Ezekiel 13, he says that they're doing this. And then he mentions what I call the currency of consciousness, why they're doing this. Those who should live are dying. Why? So those who should die can live. What are we dealing with? It's the same concept of them leaning on us, using us, not just our bodies, but also our souls to prolong their existence. We are at war here.
And the gospel is exactly what you said, but the opposite. Those who deserve to die are given the chance to attain life. Mm-hmm. Wow. Because of
it's fascinating, man.
Yeah, so good, man. So do you think orbs are beings too? I got a friend that can make orbs appear on site and catches them on camera, and
I do believe that.
There's a lot of dust particles though.
Yeah. Oh god,
and light.
Dust particles. Yeah. You know, I know that, and but I do believe that orbs exist. I'll tell you what's kind of funny. One morning rather, my mom called me. She's like, "Listen, Nate," she goes, "I got to tell you something." I said, "Okay." She said, "We used to have chickens back in the day." She's like, she goes, "Yesterday morning," or no, she said this morning, she's about an hour ago, I went out to go feed the chickens. Went to go out, collect some eggs. She goes, and I looked out, and she said, "I'm looking through the trees." She said, "This ball of light." She said, "This ball of light is just floating like that. And then it descends, it ascends, and it just starts weaving itself through the trees." She said, "I've never even heard of anything like that. Have you ever heard?" Yeah, it's an orb. But she never believed it. She didn't even know, she never heard of it either. Mm-hmm. She witnessed it. So these things exist. I will say something as well. One of my mentors, Dr. Michael Lynch, he's a great ghost hunter, amazing man too. But he told me a story about these orbs. He said, "Man," he said, "I was doing a case And he said, he said, I was in the house, and he said, I wrapped all my equipment up. I was putting my equipment in my car. He said, I saw this orb floating through an alleyway. And he's like, you know, you got to realize these orbs have the ability, we've seen them, to go inside the body and out, throughout, you know, in walls and everything. He said, but I had a laser thermometer on me, where you shoot the laser and it takes the temperature of what, you know, whatever object it is. He said, so I found it and I shot it with the laser. I wanted to see what, you know, if it was cold or warm or whatever. He said, but when the laser hit it, the light refracted off of it. So it was solid. Mm. So whatever we're dealing with has the ability to dematerialize and be solid. So, but yes, to your point, I do believe we're dealing with consciousness, and that's what they believe throughout history.
Couple questions before we move on too far.
Okay.
Again, with my studies, I've been given like these downloads and then trying to find the scriptures to prove it. And there's so much of it popping up, but about the cycles and what happens at night. We know about the witching hour, where those spirits are loosed again into your life every night, every month, every year, right? There's cycles that are happening every night. And you mentioned the dream catcher, where they get, you know, these spirits get stuck, and the bad dreams get stuck within the dream catcher. And the other part, because of my study, is tying in with astrotheology, which is the sun,
right,
and the power of the sun, and the power of those watches of the night, where we're going through stages of darkness, but then the sun rises in the morning, and it's and bringing the reward, or even the symbology of Christ raising from the dead and bringing forth joy and peace of that when the sun rises. Listen, you made it through the night. You made it through the dark night of the soul, even. And so they believe that when the sun rose, the sun would burn out those entities who weren't able to go back into the darkness, right? Because they're stuck. And then the sunlight hits them, almost where we would get an idea of a vampire as well. Right. What do you have any more revelation on the sun with these beings as well?
The nocturnal, I don't know. I'll tell you this: the encounter I had as a child, I failed a grade because I couldn't go to sleep at night. But when the sun revealed itself,
felt safe.
I mean, I felt completely safe, and I did like a year of school where, I mean, oh my God, dude, I was getting 30 minutes of sleep, because that's a lot. The sun rose at 7:30. I'm up, bam. Yeah. So I don't know why. But I do believe that they follow their own schedule, you know, just like we're talking about.
Wow. I've been deep into that study. So you bringing up the dream catcher or something I didn't even think of. Like I'm looking at
demons,
biblical antiquity, but it goes into every, like, you know, the biblical antiquity is a collection of world antiquity, if you will. It's right. if it's true for those guys, it has to be true for everyone else as well. So that's what I've been proving. So I'm glad you brought that up. Another thing that probably would scare a lot of people, and somebody posted something here in the chat. You mentioned these entities, these fallen dark beings, are trying to get these chips into you. And now we're on the brink of merging with machines and metaverse and the Elon Musk Neuralink, and also RFID technology to have all your information. So you're talking about putting these chips or implants in people. People are already freaking out. So what do you think about some of that stuff that's coming down the pipeline? Dude, are they connected with these beings? Have they made pacts with these entities?
I'll say this. I don't know if they made pacts with them, but I personally believe it really wouldn't matter to these entities, right? Because let me suggest this. I had an incubus case one time where the entity was laying in between the husband and wife at nighttime. It would displace its weight. You could actually see it laying down. This entity was so evil that it was calling the husband's phone, answering it, and then putting it on speaker, and then talking to the wife through it. Hey, come here. I want to talk to you. Get over here. I want to talk to you.
Wow.
I've had cases of, and what I'm talking about here is them interfering with technology, right? I've had, I did a show with Dark Horse Paranormal one time where these entities started out with a transmission. They talked to each other. According to Kristen, one of the hosts and one of my best friends ever, she heard it come through her earphones. One of them said to the other, "Wait until they can hear us, And then when we got live on air, they began to cuss me out and call me these different names. But Kristen, she said it shook her so much that she took her headphones off. The evil she felt emanating. It wasn't just, oh my God, she's heard creepy, EVPs before. This was different. She said it really messed her up. She threw the headphones off, ran out of the interview and everything, outside, smoked a cigarette. She said it was that evil. But here's my point, guys. If they have the ability to interfere with our technology to that degree, to call our phone, answer it for us, put that stuff on speaker, and then talk through it. My God, I don't want that in my head.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah,
it
can be hacked.
To me, it's like,
yeah,
oh my God.
Yeah, for sure. So it is we also got to bring it back to the spiritual too, because we already have very similar technology. Obviously, all of the technology that they're creating, it comes out of our anatomy. It comes out of our spiritual technology, which we already have the power to do. So we already have the ability to be hacked. Like I've never heard like an EVP speak through voice like that, but I've heard them speak through people without them knowing it. And the energy be sucked out of the room when I've had people on my podcast, huge names that I've had to say, okay, we'll talk to you later. Thanks for coming on, brother. Boom, hang up. Oh my God, I couldn't breathe. Something was speaking. He had a hatred, a bitterness, a rage was instilled with him that was coming out as a teacher. And it was like everyone could feel it. And I just had to, thank you for coming on, man. But I had to, bro. Like it wasn't just me. Everyone could feel it. So, right, they have the ability to hack us and to hack other people. And the way that they do that, the implant is your hurt, is your bitterness, is your unforgiveness. That's their Neuralink to speak to and through you. We are channels.
Yeah, you're right. And this is very interesting, man. I mean, now we can get into because now we're tapping into how they can lay themselves on us and, manipulate our thoughts and everything. I'll give you a case in point. About 2 years ago, I was at a restaurant and I was smoking my cigar, reading my books, man. And my buddy walks over to me. He goes, "Hey, dude," he goes, "I want you to help my friend out." He's like, she's got a lot of things going on in her life. And she, I know what you do. Maybe you can help her. I said, okay. So she sits down with her boyfriend and she starts her story out. She's like, she goes, "My best friend lived with her grandfather in this really old house. And they had an entity in the house. And she said the other day, this entity chased, it was like manifest, you could see it. It chased her grandfather out. He had a coronary and he died of a heart attack in the lawn, but he left the home to this girl, this his granddaughter. And she said, "Oh, this is my best friend. This is her best friend." She's like, she wants me to come stay with her. She said, "But I'm afraid to. I don't want to go in that house. If it's physical enough to chase somebody out and terrify them enough to die, I don't want anything to do with it." And I said, "Well, it's probably wise in in your case. It's probably wise." But I said, as I'm talking to you, which I'm going to say this in real time. As I'm talking to her, I see this dark cloud just envelop her. It laid on her like a cloud. And I said, instantly, I had knowledge, words of knowledge. I said, okay. I said, I do believe that there is a grandfather that needs help. I do believe that there's a young girl that needs help. But I said, and I can help your friend. I said, but I believe that the reason you were sent here today is because you have an attachment of suicide on you. And I said that you don't know. I said, it's not allowing you to scream for help. I said, so the only thing you could do subconsciously is to come to me knowing you're the one that needs the help the most. Dude, when I say it was like an explosion of tears, you could feel it break, snap.
Just by you identifying it.
Yes. Yeah. And the atmosphere changed. She started bawling. She grabs her boyfriend's hand and she's leaning on him, just bawling. I said, now we're going to deal with the entity. I said, who in your family committed suicide? Because I said, this is a familial attachment. She said, my grandfather killed himself in 2014. I said, all right. That entity has attached itself to your family and it thinks it has authority over you. I said, so what it's doing now is it's laying on you. Now it's claiming you. Why? Because it says, I already had the other one. I'm going to get you too. So it's very interesting in their psychology. But I employed what's called the Kabbalistic exorcistic rite that Isaac Luria taught. He said that a lot of these entities, when they manifest in people, especially as attachments, they will send their emotions into that individual like tentacles, not allowing them to think for themselves. And you're talking about how the Neuralink or the implant is our emotions or whatever, now trauma, yeah, they would literally lay on top of the pain, on top of the trauma. And then they will send thoughts to that individual. I'm not good enough. I should take my own life. And then watch what happens. If we catch that and we assign that authority, boom. You know, my daddy always told me I wasn't worth it. And I agree with that spirit. Now that spirit's growing into you. So it gives you a thought to see if you agree with it. Then it goes back and says, see, we are making a covenant, an agreement here. Now, watch this, to the point where the entity is so much inside of the individual that the individual cannot determine their thoughts from the entity's thoughts. Now it's thinking for them. It's deep stuff. So what I began to do is I began to give her, I guess I gave her authority back. I began to pull out the intentions of this entity, the emotions that she's been feeling. And I said, I'm going to speak directly to this entity. And I'm telling you, this is not the word of God for you. This is not this is not the plan of God for you. You are worthy. And I told her, I said, I need you to say these words with me. These are not my thoughts. When I got done with that, dude, it was unbelievable. I saw her about 6 months later, a completely different person. Her relationship with her boyfriend was healed. Her life was heading in the right direction. But I think that's the Kabbalistic exorcistic rite, where it's not just holy water and then displace the entity, creating a second victim, you know, but dealing with the emotions, giving them their autonomy back. And then now when there's authority there, now you look at the entity and say, you don't have authority. No more authority here. None any longer. Right. Because now she's saying you got to go. You're illegal.
Yes. Legal ground. Authority is that. Listen, hey, she said we can be here. How? Well, she came into legal contract with us by this. How much time you got? And
give me 10 more minutes, man. I just
10 minutes. 10 minutes. Gotcha. All right. So let's run through these. Let's do a speed round. So you got 10 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark this down. Speed round of questions because I got a bunch for you. Now, casting out those demons, it's not just simply identifying. There's many people who study to identify, but they don't have the authority. They're not ambassadors. They don't know their authority, right? They can identify it. Hence, in the Bible, we got the biblical example of the 7 sons of Sceva, who they were like, hey, we identify evil spirits. Let's cast them out like these guys. And if you want to explain that story, not everybody knows, but kind of run through that of how why they couldn't do that. Yeah.
Oh my God, I adjure you in the name of Jesus who Paul preaches. Yeah. Sceva means mind reader. These were fakers, frauds, people, and I'm not people who, give me $50, I'll give you something. I'll give you, this reading, and it doesn't really, make any sense. It's not really accurate, but whatever. That's what they thought. And so they thought that they could employ those same methods without knowing the man. Oh, this is a good teaching right here, right? I'm getting passionate, man. By Jesus whom Paul preacheth. Well, that's a method. Paul, you know what I mean? You've got to meet it. You've got to encounter him. You can't just, throw a Bible at these things and they won't respect you. Jesus, I know. Paul, I know. Who are you? And they beat them until they were naked. I think it's funny. There's a measure of respect amongst these entities. And it's just like, and I know that might be controversial, but there was an old drunkard named A.A. Allen back in the day. And people said he was a fraud. He wasn't a fraud. Matter of fact, he had an alcohol problem. The man was legit. There was one demoniac that they had outside of a tent. She was curled up in a ball in the back seat of a car, and nobody could get that spirit out. He walked over to her, and it's documented. I'm A.A. Allen. He whispered in her ear, laid hands on her, gone. So these entities, the real recognizes the real.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't even know where I was going with it. Yeah. But I do know
well,
the
they probably had no light in them. Like they had no light, which is that authority to speak to it. And what that light is, that's your devotional life. That is your alms that you're doing. And God takes notice of your alms, and there's rewards. One of the rewards is being able to speak to entities, and they're removed. And so they didn't have no light that gave them the revelation of how to do it, or even the ability to speak to such entities. So, man, so good, bro. So much comes out of that. So many more questions. So I mentioned that. Another question for you: have you heard of teratoma tumors, which was something that was really interesting for me to learn about concerning these spirits trying to possess people? Have you heard of that term and know it?
I haven't yet. Educate me.
Okay, so simply, and I got to, I wrote about it in my book, but I got to give credit. I heard about it from Chris Everett. Chris Everett covered this in one of his Spirit World documentaries, which really inspired me. But the teratoma tumor is these tumors that people are finding on them. They go and they have a mass and a big growth on their side, and they go to the doctor, and there's eyeballs growing in it, there's teeth growing, there's faces growing in it.
Oh, from malignant.
Yeah.
From malignant. Yeah.
So it's almost like these entities that are in that person long enough, and they have a host, but they want their own body, and they're almost like trying to form their own body out of the person. Yeah, really interesting.
Okay, let's dive into that real quick, because again, possession plays such a major role in all of this. It's unreal. So dealing with an entity that wants its own autonomy, doesn't want it just its own consciousness, but it wants its own self, right? So in the 16th century, in the Dybbuk phenomenon, or the Dybbuk phenomenon, possession began to evolve and mutate into something that's profoundly disturbing in my mind. We had cases of women being accosted in their dreams, right? The dream demons, the entity that would manifest as a former lover or a husband, try to inseminate them. Now, I've had cases like this all across the world. So anyways, in the 16th century, these women would think that there was just a dream, right? It was just a dream. They would wake up the next day with handprints and bruises and scarifications on their body, and then they would become possessed by the entity that assaulted them. They would go to the exorcist, and I'm so-and-so. And it was 99% of the time it was somebody that lived and died. Wasn't a good dude. And then it mutated again. And now we're dealing with this. We're starting to point to the idea of them wanting to be autonomous, right? They want their own anatomy. It's not just their own consciousness. So then these individuals would become accosted by and then possessed by the entity that accosted them. Then they would become pregnant with the entity that possessed them. So much so, this is fascinating stuff right here. They would go to the exorcist, and the exorcist would see the entity curled up in their womb like a baby, which leads to what my point in some of my work lately has been, that pregnancy to us is possession to them, and possession to them is pregnancy to us. In other words, it's not just that they're possessing us, they're putting things in us to possess.
Wow.
This is why Genesis 6 matters the most. Software inside the child's hardware, software in the hardware. That's why they were born among us again. You had the giants, hardware. You had the Rephaim. Yeah.
I never made this distinction. So we know that the giants, the word we get there is heroes, the heroes of renown, right? And so there was these giants born on the earth, and there was these beings on the earth that were at war with the seed of the woman. So these are we call them reptilians. You call them whatever you want. They have a lot of different names, right? And so we're on the earth with them. They're here with us, and so they were always at war with the children of Israel, which is us spiritually, antiquity, whatever. But then I never made this connection until yesterday, as doing my study. Herod, the word King Herod comes from hero. The word King Herod is the king of the heroes, and he dealt with the seed of the woman as well. When he heard about the Messiah that the stargazers followed, the Magi followed to welcome the birth of the Messiah, the one that would overthrow and break the bands of darkness that was on the earth. When Herod, the heroes, like still from that lineage, he found out he's got to do his ancestors justice and kill all the children that was born within this time span to try to kill the Messiah that would crush his head in the end.
You're right. We're dealing with, it's almost like a spiritual bloodline.
Yeah.
And I think, again, way back during the beginning of the interview, we are talking about, is that the same thing of, Yahweh inseminating Mary and everything? Well, I would like to say it's like this, okay? When you have an entity possessing people like they did, like the necromancer, which he was a necromancer in the Gatherings, he was. You're dealing with an entity who is possessed. He's being worn like a garment. It's his skin. The entity's looking through the eyes.
Yeah.
You have a spirit that's it's being made flesh now. And then when Yeshua gets up there, this is amazing, okay? In the Old Testament, there's a prophecy that Yahweh refers to when he deals with necromancers. He says, in that day, I will come to you and I will number you. Oh my God. I'll number you. You will bow down and worship me. Okay. Yeshua's sandy footfall hits the beach and he's walking up and he sees this man who dwells in the tombs. And he asks them, what is your name? We are Legion. Oh, we're many. What did he do? He just got numbered. He's fulfilling step. This is what Martin Buber says. God speaks a word and steps into it. This is what he's doing right now. He numbers the necromancer, and the necromancer worships him.
Every knee must bow, and every tongue must confess.
It was an absolute hit slap.
I gotta let you go. Because I know you're a bit bite for time, but what is your spiritual practice, man? Like, how do you, this stuff? What is your connection with Yeshua? What is your connection with the light? What is your connection with God?
Unction,
how do you maintain clean hands and a pure heart?
I study unction. I grew up Pentecostalism. The men that I wouldn't say worship, but I pretty much put on a pedestal were guys that lived a life of humility before God. They knew they're gifted. They often were nomads. They lived with a profound loneliness. And I think that I identify with them in the sense that I was designed to be a deliverance minister. So that's really my connection. Now, with respect to how do I get that sticky feeling off of me after I do cases that really feel like being watched, I watch Fraser Crane, dude. I know it's not that much of a spiritual thing, man, but I watch Fraser. Cheers. I love I don't know, but that's my kind of spiritual practice.
Okay, so there's no prayer, no devotion, no fasting. Like you've done that. You've kind of prepared yourself already.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and I preserved that sensitivity too, which is something that takes it takes a lot of practice. But you have to allow yourself to be alone without being lonely.
Because you never are.
Right.
Once you understand that, because you're not watching Frasier by yourself anymore. You know what I'm saying? You're entertaining angels and God and Christ and all the beings, the demons even too. They're watching with you. So we're navigating and wading through this, bro. There's so much more that we can go into, and I want to go into. This subject is near and dear to my heart, and the way that you approach it as being open and being a student of antiquity and of the scriptures, bro, it's right up my alley, man. I really enjoy everything you brought to the table. Listen, we didn't even get to go into demons getting access through movies and portals and the television, so deep. But hey, let people know where they can go to purchase your books, book a session with you, find out more about your work and your interviews, all that cool stuff, bro.
Man, I used to have a website. I'm getting it professionally redone. I don't know if I want to have a website, man. I'm already on social media, so until I get that done, I don't want to share it with you guys. Anyway, so it's I'm on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. On all of those sites, I'm Nathaniel J. Gillis. I just started up my YouTube channel, man. I went from 200 subscribers to 600 in the last 3 days.
And you're going to go up more now, so.
I hope so, man. I'm excited. People need to hear this research and at least get a different perspective of it.
Yes.
But, man, so that's how to get a hold of me. And I do counseling sessions. I'm busy. I get real busy sometimes. And so it takes me a long time to get back to people. Yeah. But I try to get back to people as soon as I can.
For sure, for sure, bro. Thanks for coming on. Really quick, last thing, just
Thanks,
leave us with a really quick list, as much as you can think of the different beings that are on the dark side encountering mankind. Is it just demons? Is there names? There's levels, dimensions?
I call them Molters. That are made of the same substance but do not have the same status.
That's good.
That's stuff. A little hook, right? That's a little hook, because I want to come back and do it. I'm just kidding.
No, we are. We'll do it. Listen, I'm open. I do this for a living, man, bro, and I know you do too. So let's make it happen. Really resonated with you, man. Thank you so much for coming on, man. It means the world. Thank you.
God bless you, brother. You have a good night.
You too. Many blessings. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you go follow his page, Nathaniel J. Gillis. Make sure you do it. And actually, I say make sure you do it because you probably won't. Let's do it together. Can we do it together? I'm going to try to share my screen. And this is my screen. And so let's just go to YouTube right now. He just started a YouTube channel. And those of you who are listening on the podcasting apps, if you're driving, I just ask you to pull over and let's go subscribe to his channel right now as an act of faith and support, and just a way of saying thank you for coming on and sharing that information. So let's go to YouTube. Nathaniel J. Gillis. Everyone type that in. Did you type it in? Awesome. There he is. There's his beautiful face. 605 subscribers. Let's let him know that we appreciate him. Let's subscribe and show him some love. And I hope to refresh this here in a little while, and we see that number go up just because of the people who are already on YouTube and the people who are already listening to this. And by the end of the week, that number is going to go up. I'm going to repost this channel. I'm going to repost this page. And listen, like attracts like, guys. And there's a reason for that, right? And I really resonated with him on a level vibrationally, right, as far as what he's been through and what he's bringing to the table. And it was amazing. I love it. So, and I know that you guys will love it. You guys are sticking around for something. So I know that you felt the same way. Show him some love, subscribe, like his videos, buy his book, all that cool stuff. Again, like attracts like. Me and him, there's a level of vibrational frequency that wants, I'm trying to make this, it wants balance. Vibrational frequencies want balance. We want to meet. We want to find other versions of ourselves. I mean, that's the whole deal with the narcissist, where it can come back to bite you. Is you only want to hang around people that look like you. You get enamored with your own beauty, and so there are some sides to this that can be used for darkness quick. But being able to resonate with somebody, it's about resonance. We discussed this the other day, and it was another fresh revelation for me, which when we was talking about the different levels that people may have, whether it's morally, like we may connect on a moral level, but we don't connect on a spiritual level. We may connect on a spiritual level, but your moral standards are way too low. You're using it for nefarious gains, right? So things are about balance. And when you find somebody that you resonate with, you try to find balance. And the reason I bring that up, because I thought that the way spirit works and the way balance works and having uneven scales, the Bible says do not have uneven scales. And it goes into a lot of detail about that. So these uneven scales is about finding balance and finding resonance in the vibrational frequency, in like attracting like. For us, man, he likes the things I like. Listen, there's things I could talk to him about that I couldn't talk about the last podcast. And the next podcast, it's going to be the same thing. But I'm going to find resonance with those people. I'm going to find something that, oh, wow, but you do like this. Okay, boom. Let's go down this path of spiritual ascension. Let's go down this path of UFO abduction. Let's go down the path of fasting and the power thereof, right? So there's a lot of different subjects that we find resonance with. And what the Bible talks about, that Paul gives you a nugget when he says that you become all things to all men so that you can win some. You're finding resonance with that person. You're finding common ground. I remember on the job site years ago, the only thing that I could talk about with people was the football game. And I didn't even watch football. I did when I was a kid, but I'd look at the scores and see somebody who won, and we'd get at work and, hey man, how about them Cowboys? Oh man, they had a good game. You know, you got to find common ground with individuals, and that's really what it's about. Finding common ground with people, and not just finding resonance with people. That's how we heard the term, your vibe attracts your tribe. Literally, people. Well, we don't fight with flesh and blood. This is a battle and a journey of powers and principalities in the realms of the spirit. We're not people. We're not these flesh shoots. We are spirits that have a body. We are those spirits that now possess a body. And so when it comes to vibration and resonance, we look for like attracts like, and we pull people up to our level. We don't want to be imbalanced. The Bible says, do not be unequally yoked with an unbeliever. A yoke is it was a contraption that is used to have two oxen walking together in line, and they have to walk at the same speed and in the same direction. You point them in the same direction, and they're yoked together, and they're going to go in that direction. Do not be unequally yoked with people, with spirits. Make sure that we have the end goal in mind, because if we're walking on this path, if you deviate a little bit, you're going to end up in a place you weren't ready to go, because you're unequally yoked with the spirits or with the person. And so make sure you're not unequally yoked. And that's wisdom, because it is about resonance, finding balance. If you become imbalanced, if you become unbalanced, then two things have to happen. You step up to that person's level vibrationally, or you have to step down and go to where they are. Thank God for Jesus, because he is the story of God stepping down to our level and speaking to us. God said, you know what, I gave them a chance. They messed up. They didn't understand what I was saying. Let me go down there and become one of them. Let me step down into their darkness and become one of them, so that I can bring them up and raise them like I'm going to raise Christ. Like I've already raised Christ from before the foundations of the earth. His story that is written of in the stars. This is going to become their story. Let me step down so I can bring them up to my level, so they can ascend, so that they can be righteous, so that they can alchemize their darkness, so that they can be houses for the great spirit. Not lesser spirits, not fallen spirits, not deceptive spirits, but for the Spirit of God. Know ye not that you are the temple of God, and the Spirit of God resides within you. You are a home, you are a house for spirits. And that house has to be filled with the Holy Spirit, and not the spirit of anger, not the spirit of rage, not the spirit of manipulation, not the spirit of witchcraft, but the holy, beautiful, sacred, set apart spirit. Open up more of yourself, open up more of your heart to let that spirit come in and possess you. The Holy Spirit wants to possess you. It is about resonance. So we thank God that we're able to step up to his level. He showed us how to do it by following his example, showing love, and moving from animal to divine nature. We have both natures within us, but this is a test. This place is a school to ascend, to take it to that next level. Going back to resonance, to be able to step up and maintain balance. The narrow path is about balance. It's not veering too far to the right or to the left. It's in the middle. It's not up or down. It's not left or right. It is maintaining. Now we journey both sides. We journey left and right. We go up and down. There's yin and yang. That's duality, and that's part of this game. But it's about maintaining resonance in the middle, balance. So again, spirits, we're spirits. We talked about fallen spirits, demonic spirits, possessive spirits, angry spirits, right? Essences, ideas, right? So we can, if you look at them as living entities, if you look at them as just ideas or the thought life of a person and the way that they think, if you want to make it less spiritual, because it is psychological for sure, they're tied together. There's several levels, there's 4 levels of this. It is literal. You read it literally, but it is allegorical. It is spiritual, and it is metaphysical. And it is astrological as well. It's going on in all of these places. And the key is to bring about harmony, balance, to be at peace with God, to be content. That's to be balanced. Because godliness with contentment is great gain. Find peace with yourself. In order to do that, you got to find peace with God. And finding peace with God on that journey, you're going to find peace with your enemies. You're going to find peace with all the spirits around you. You may even salute them. Hey, I see what you're doing, but not me, not my family. You'll be at peace. You won't be at war with yourself. There's so many people who are at war. So many Christians, so many believers who are at war. Then we look at the Muslims or some Jewish people or Hindu people who are at perfect peace with themselves and with their families, with all the beings and animals. They're at peace. They found peace. They found resonance with those beings. It is part of the sovereignty plan. It is part of the ecosystem of heaven and the way things work. We're in and out of that daily. It's inside of us. It's on us. It's above us. It's below us. Everything is mirrored. It is written. It is living. It is vibration. It is the sound of heaven. So those spirits want you to come down to their level. They don't want to upgrade. They don't want to forgive. They don't want to forget. They don't want to, I got friends who try to turn bad spirits into good spirits and stuff like that and try to show them their true identity and stuff. Like, no. That's what they were created to do. And they want you on their level. They want to bring you down. And if those beings are real, if those ideas are real, Chris Garner, I see your comment, and I'm with you 100%, 1,000%. It's metaphysical. It is spiritual, but it is going on in Golgotha, the place of the skull, and internally. We say the throne of heaven is a place where God dwells outside of us, but Scripture says that God dwells in our hearts and He's within us. So it's a mirror. It's as above, so below, as within, so without. There's many ways to break it down. So yeah, it can be broke down in the terms of psychology and unlock so much that you've come into agreement with these spirits. You've given them legal ground. Okay, well, if you don't agree with the spirits, it's an idea. And once you learn truth, once you learn the truth about yourself, about God, about how much you're loved, about who you are, those demons are cast out of your mind. They have no more legal ground to be there. If you think you don't deserve love, if you think you don't deserve money, let's go with money. I know a lot of people who think they don't deserve it. I come from a poor family. I thought that rich people were snobby. There was a lot of stuff that I associated with money that was ungodly. It wasn't real. Guess where it was real at? It was real. Only in here. It was my reality. It was the way that I viewed the world. It was the light that was within me, because light has to come in through your eyes, and it also comes out of your eyes. And that light that is within you in that area, which is illumination, allows me to see and to make an assessment and to put a name on it and declare it, put it in a folder. Rich people are snobs. Hey, so-and-so, I own this company. Okay, cool. Hey, I'm Pastor so-and-so, man. I want you to come to youth. Okay. Christians are this. Okay. Is that truth? It's my truth at that moment, until I'm illuminated, until light comes in, and that ungodly belief, that demon that is robbing me from making new connections, from beautiful friendships, for people who want to help me out financially, people who want to partner with me and donate. Nah, keep your money, man. Everybody needs your money. Hold on. Like, these people are like just good people. They want to help. It's their normal. Like, their plumb line is money. They come from that family, but it's something within me that has to come. It has to get out of me. In order for me to go to the next level, you got to deal with your demons. And dealing with your demons is dealing with your thought life, because you have made legal contract for those thoughts to take resonance in your mind. So this conversation is totally interchangeable. It is psychological. It is spiritual. It is astrological. It's all of it. It is going on internally. It's anatomical. Richie, did I say that right? Anatomical? Your anatomy? Is that the realm?
Anatomical.
Anatomical? Look, that's what the Richie, you didn't know he was here. Listen. It is all of those things. There are different realms, and we got to master each one, and we journey through each one to get revelation on how to defeat the other. So some people, especially Christians, can only deal with the thought life and deal with those demons unless they give them a name. They got to give them a name because it makes it real. Because we've given everything else a name. We've created a folder that has a name on it. Rich people are this. White people are racist. Black people want to fight me. Poor people are this. The light is fire. And all of that, all of those fake, phony, none of that's real. You have to bring that to the light. Live in the light and let God destroy it and purify it, because we do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. Allow your mind to be retaught. Listen, guys, that's what repentance means, is to have a change of mind. Listen, I thought it was this, but it's really that. I thought religion was this. I thought God was that. I thought so-and-so was this. I thought the pastor was a good guy. Wow, he's really this, right? To be retaught and reformed, not for the lower nature, not for the negative, not to the woe is me, but to prophesy, to see the good in people, to see the light in people, not to see them according to, well, I went to an all-black school and we got beat up by black people like every day. We had to fight black people. They would hold the doors closed and wouldn't let us out of the rooms. They would, fight me and all my white friends. Listen, we were like the only white people. I have a relationship. Is that all black people? Heck no. Same thing. I didn't learn that until I dealt with white people who wanted to fight me too. All the rednecks wanted to fight me. So now I got to fight the rednecks and the blacks. Like, who am I with? Like, And so you deal with all men equally according to their deeds. Don't judge anything or anyone before its appointed time. Deal with all people righteously. Judge their fruit. Judge their fruit, because all you got to do is hang around it long enough and you'll be able to partake. And you'll say, you know what? I want more of this in my life. I want more of this sustenance. I want more of this fruit. What is the fruit? Love, kindness, patience, versus other people. And I used to be that friend back in the day. Like, why every time I hang around you, you want to go get drugs? Why every time I hang around you, you want to drink? Why every time I hang around you, you want to gossip and talk about people? Y'all know those people in your life. You have them. You may be that person to some degree. Why you always want to be deep and talk about spiritual stuff? Why you just can't, be a regular person and take a walk? It's the folders and stuff that we put people in, and we judge them and we categorize them. And they become that in our realm. That's not who they are. We project it. Prophesying is being able to see the good in them, to be able to see the best and to call that out and to name them that, something that they're not yet, to be able to see that light that is within them. Everyone has it. And that light may be just a little spark. Some people, it's a wildfire. They caught the right wind. The right person walked by them. Jesus or Paul or Peter or somebody like that was in their path, in their life, and blew upon that divine spark, and now they're on fire and their life has been changed. Listen, me 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, I was just in the right place at the right time, and somebody saw potential in me. Somebody spoke to that flame within me and it turned into a wildfire 20 years ago, and I've never been the same since. We have that ability. We have that power to speak to the things that are not as though they were. It is spiritual, but make it normal. Don't make it weird, man. Let it evolve out of regular conversation with people. And that's just who you are. You're an encourager. You're an uplifter. You help people. People can open up to you and share their problems, and you won't go gossip about them. You want more light? Do those things. What you read in the Bible, and you read the story and life of Jesus, what he did, do it. And you will become light. It is spiritual. You're literally getting light in your body. It is in philosophical. It is in your mind, because yes, the stinking thinking is making its way out, and you have new thoughts about rich people. You have new thoughts about black people, new thoughts about this, about that. It's not until that changes. You have to give your brain a bath. When? Every day. Do it every day. Every day. If you got any, because these thoughts are hurting you. They're not even hurting that person. That person don't even know that you think that way, unless you tell them, unless you throw shade at them when they're around, or comment on their Facebook anytime they post something witty. Like, check yourself. Examine yourself to make sure that you are in good faith. So, I hope that helps you guys. I really enjoyed this episode. This stuff is really deep. It is really spiritual. It is allegorical. There are names to these things. It can personify itself as physical entities in this realm for sure. You know, witches, wizards, necromancers, those dudes are real. Like beings, you know, travel from other realms and show up in the physical for sure. That totally happens. But they have to pass through the spiritual portal first. What they are, what they do, their attributes. And it gets really deep, and we are dedicated to exploring that. I've given my life to this. If you read my bio, if you read my book, I let it be known that I've given my life to the study of the spirit world. And in my studies, it has led me to see that it is not just spirit. The word spirit or spiritual in the Bible is ethereal. It is the etheric realm. It is beings that exist in those realms. And we exist in those realms too. We just don't know it. We're seated with Christ Jesus in heavenly places right now. In the heavens. In the stars, maybe. Maybe we have a star that is governing, that is guiding. I ain't gonna listen. I'm dropping too much. We're gonna break this stuff down in the upcoming weeks. With that being said, thank you guys for hanging out again. Make sure you check out my Patreon and all the cool stuff I'm bringing there. If you want to support what I'm doing, that's the best way to support. You can donate to the ministry. You can share. You can do all those things. Everything helps. Every little bit helps. And so I'm making my meditations free. So for those of you who have not heard the throne room meditation, if you have not heard the encountering Jesus, or there's so many, the Heavenly Father, Earthly Mother encounter, which there's voice actors and there's sounds and experiences and all of that. Make sure you go check that out. And I'm making it free, and it does cost money to make. Like, I had to hire voice actors. I had to hire sound people to do sound effects and all of those kind of things. And I want to continue to do it. I have so many ideas, and the way that I'm able to continue to do that and to make it free is when people give and donate and things. Just like my friend Renee, when you heard that ding, she just donated through Super Chat. Thank you, Renee, for believing in the work. And so the little helps the many. The people who step out and help, even if it's, you know, on a monthly basis of $5 or whatever you can do a month, it really helps. And I'm gonna try to start. There's a lot of things behind paywalls, and people do help and people do support. And so I want to be able to keep doing it, to be able to take it to the next level. So much more in mind that you guys don't even know. I'm excited about it, but I'm going to make those free. You can go to TruthSeekah.com and click on meditations and check those out. I've been promoting them. It has been a source of income for me for years now. And so me stepping away from that and making it free, I am going to be relying on donations. But for those of you who aren't able to give, listen, download it as much as you want. Tell everybody about it, and support. Share this. If you can't donate, share this video out. With that, I'm gonna say peace and shalom. We'll do it again very soon. Peace, peace.
Your way is so much higher than mine. So much higher than mine. So much deeper than mine. So much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes episodes of the TruthSeekah Podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.